Welcome to another episode of Punch TV. I'm your host, Jody, and we have a jam-packed episode for you today. Of course, we have Tony the Collector, and he's going to tell us how to protect our comics, to keep our investments safe, or to just expand the longevity of our collection if we just want them for reading copies or whatever. We also have Tweet Beat, wouldn't be Punch TV without that. And we have another episode of 5 Minutes Film School with Craig. And we have a very special guest today. We have in the studio artist Justin Shauf. He's here to talk about his successful Kickstarter campaign and the upcoming comic Frankenstein. So stay tuned for that. I am here with artist extraordinaire Justin Shauf, and congratulations on your Kickstarter campaign. That is awesome that you guys met your goal.
Yeah, it is absolutely fantastic. It's pretty nerve-wracking waiting to hit the funding goal, and you're hoping and you're sharing it on the internet, on Twitter and Facebook, but yeah, it's a huge relief when you make the goal.
Now, you've been making comics for a while. You did Space Pig, Hamadeus, I love that name, and other things. But this is your first time that you've done like a Kickstarter to actually get something published on your own, right?
Yes, I did the artwork for Canadian Core, which was a Kickstarter a couple of years ago. But yeah, this is the first time I've taken the reins and kind of made it my own.
It's a very brave thing to do. Now, other people, I'm sure, will want to like follow in your footsteps and publish their own stuff. It's a glorious Renaissance age where people can do that. What things did you do specifically to try to position yourself for success? Was there any strategies that you had?
Well, I should add that just because my name was on the Kickstarter, that Graham Williams, the writer, was definitely very active behind the scenes, I guess. So it wasn't on my own. But one of the things they always recommend is basically have the project done. And that made a big difference. When you could say, yes, in fact, all the pages are drawn. It will be coming out on time, as promised.
Yeah, then you want to be able to deliver, right?
Because there's been, everybody's heard those Kickstarter horror stories. Their guys haven't delivered on what they promised, and it kind of leaves a sour taste in people's mouths.
Yeah, but you're a good prairie boy. You would never leave us hanging, so this is good.
Well, and that's why I was like, I need my name behind this, and I can put everything behind it, and I'm putting my reputation behind it, and I'm not going to let people down.
Exactly. You want to maintain your integrity.
That's
so
right.
What happens now that you've got the dough, the thing is finished, it's just a matter of getting it printed, and then how do people get it? If they weren't lucky enough to get on the ground floor in the Kickstarter, can they still buy your comic?
Oh, definitely. I will be at different conventions throughout Canada. You can always contact me online, and I'm happy to ship anywhere that somebody wants it, all over the world. There was quite a few backers from the United States, actually, and it was pretty neat to see that it wasn't just friends and family and your aunts and uncles and your mom, but that it was a product that perfect strangers seen the quality behind it, or seen that it's a pretty awesome feeling, actually.
Totally. I saw it shared on Facebook and other places by a lot of different people. So it's nice to, feel like everyone's encouraging you and is, stepping forward to support you as much as we possibly can.
Oh, for sure.
So.
And there's a couple people like, yeah, I've seen your Canadian Core stuff, and I've seen your Space Pig stuff, and really want to support this. It's a pretty awesome feeling.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, you've got that under your belt. It's good confidence boost, but you're a pretty awesome artist. So
thank you.
I always like to ask when we have artists on the show, what's your process? Having a great writer to work with, like Graham, is always good. But when you actually sit down with a script that either you've done or somebody else has done, are you just penciling stuff? Do you strictly do digital? What's your tool of choice?
I work completely traditionally with a pencil and a paper, and then I use a brush for 99% of all the inking.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm very old school. I remember reading when you're trying to figure out how do people make comic books as a kid, And that was, oh, you need to learn how to ink with a brush, and like that was just how you did it. Well, so then that's how
there's a benefit to that, though. I mean, it takes a little longer, I think, and if you want to repair mistakes, it's probably a lot harder. But at the end of the day, you actually have like original artwork in front of you that's pretty special.
And well, I mean, yeah, there's lots of times there's some whiteout, and and when you're filling in a large area of black, and you're like, oh, I could have just clicked and filled and been done. So yeah, it is a slower process, but I think as amazing as some of the digital brushes are now and some of the programs, sometimes the brush just does what it wants to do, and it makes the right line that you didn't even realize was the right line till it's on there. There's still something magical about working with those old school tools.
There is. They kind of have a spirit of their own, don't they? So you see yourself pretty much continuing to work this way, or do you see a day when you might adopt some of the benefits of the digital age?
I like inking traditionally for sure, and I can't see that ever going away. But penciling, I could see myself moving to digital pencils and then printing it out on the board, just because I hate sweeping up eraser shavings. And sometimes it is nice to know, it would be nice to just be able to cut and paste and move ahead slightly because you didn't leave enough space for a word balloon, rather than, oh, I guess I have to erase this and start all over again. So there are definitely benefits to digital that I'm not naive about.
Well, I'm sure you'll find a happy medium one way or another. But for the meantime, I love what you're doing. Keep it up. Don't change anything because it's awesome. And I can't wait to get my hands on a copy of Frankenstein. It's going to be so good. Awesome. Thanks. Well, thank you so much for joining us. 5 minutes just like flies by on this show. And we'll have to have you and Graham both back to talk about the success of your book once it's out and sure, people have received it. So I definitely put that on your calendar to come back.
Oh, for sure. That would be, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Justin. And thanks, everybody, for watching. We'll be right back after these messages.
Punch TV is brought to you in part by Amazing Stories, providing Saskatoon with comics, games, toys, graphic novels, t-shirts, and more for over 22 years. Online at AmazingStoriesComics.com. In person on 8th Street in Saskatoon.
It's me, Hank, Sam's Tony, and I'm here backstage at the Persephone Theater where I just checked out an awesome performance by Chasing Our Tails Theater. It was called Where It Hurts. It was amazing. I thought, what a great time for me to talk about what you should be watching, reading, listening to, playing this month on Tweetbeat.
In the new Tomb Raider, Lara Croft raids a tomb! In a movie with plot holes as wide as the chasm she was leaping across, 57 out of 100. And after you finish watching Punch TV, go to your device and follow Grown Ups Read Things They Wrote as Kids. I was part of the live show in Saskatoon and it was amazing! And Everything Sucks on Netflix is the best thing since the Fresh Prince moved to Bel Air. 89 out of 100. Hashtag feels. In Red Sparrow, an alpaca-haired Russian spy used her body and muted cold demeanor to bore us to death. 49 out of 100. I've been reading The Thing Lou Couldn't Do with my son and we both love it. There's a positive message, but really he just wants to climb a whole bunch of trees now. 92 out of 100. Andrew WK put out another over-the-top, overproduced, overzealous music album and we totally like it. 84 out of 100. Music is worth living for. And get your family together and play Jenga Pass Challenge. We double dare you. We double dog dare you to do it. Good luck.
So that's it for me. My name is Hank. For everything that you should be watching, reading, listening to, playing, follow at Hank and Kelso and at Shaw Punch TV. For Chasing Our Tails, check out Chasing Tails, YXE on Twitter, and catch you next time on Tweetbeat.
My name is Tony and welcome to The Collector. Today we're going to talk about something that I care about dearly. We're going to talk about comics and how to protect them and how to value your comics, which to me would be there's no sense buying a comic if you don't know the value of it, because they're not just for reading, people. They're not just for reading.
Well,
They're
on your
collecting.
last interview with Paul,
Yes.
he was talking about how like the first comics he got were from the grocery store and was kind of like didn't feel valuable. But when he went to a comic shop and they gave him one in a sleeve,
Yes.
suddenly it felt valuable, right?
Yes.
And it is important to protect your investment if you're gonna like keep them over a long period of time as a collector, or if you want to try to sell them down the road. So what's the best way to do that?
So when you go into most comic stores, they're going to give you a sleeve. So basically, you're going to walk out with a bit of a sleeve, and usually they're not super expensive sleeves, but it does protect. So if you buy your standard backboard, I use silver backboards and sleeves, and that way.
What's the difference between silver and current?
Let me do that for you, sweetheart.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank
because
you.
those are the two main sizes, right?
Okay.
Current and silver, right?
So basically, silver is going to fit your comic with a little bit of edge. The current is actually going to fit your comic and a backboard, but there's not a lot of space. It tends to keep your comic tighter, but at the same time, you can, with a larger comic, you can get some waggling and some woggling,
Yeah.
which means that sometimes you can bend them inside the sleeve even. So I
Bad.
stay with silver.
Okay.
Silver is a way to go with your regular comics. But you can also do some stuff where you get more expensive. Now, these are Mylights. These are actually a thicker, more of an archival sleeve. And you get the archival sleeves, you can get the archival backboards. So basically what that is you're going to have a guarantee that your cards and your comics aren't going to turn yellow.
What's so what's the benefit? Like, what is this made out of that the other ones aren't?
So they're acid-free, 100% backing, or 100% acid-free. Now these are also going to protect your comics, but you'll have to actually change your boards more often. So if you're a good collector, you're going to change your boards every 5 years. These will last a little bit longer, and you're basically guaranteed not to have yellowing comics, which is important because you really don't want yellowing comics. The difference is price, and the difference is how often you want to change your boards. They'll both keep your boards protected. These ones are actually way thicker too. They're double the thickness, so there's that. And then you can just go with regular silver bags and regular current bags.
Okay, so then there's this hard top loader. What's the benefit there?
The top loader actually is going to protect your comic in case it drops. You can actually you can actually store your comics in these, but they're more for display. The top loaders are more of a display feature that you would have for your comics.
Okay.
So you can display them, you can put them in like this guy here. We have them in at the store, we have them bagged, boarded, and then we actually put them directly in the top loader. And then that way, these things get dropped, they get hit, and they're not going to.
That's called the vault.
The vault, exactly.
Pour Coke on it, whatever.
It's a good start. This is actually the vault.
Okay.
Ooh, the Cadillac.
This is the Cadillac. Now, this is a CGC. This actually is a graded comic. So this comic has been sent in to CGC, the Certified Guarantee Company, which is an odd name, but it's a guarantee. And this is going to stop a lot of environmental problems that you can have with comics as far as air and stuff goes. But at the same time, you're also getting a grade on your comic, which is important. So basically, if you're going to be buying and selling comics, this comic here, I graded this. I'm not a professional grader, but I had a good idea with the tear on the top what the comic was worth. This is actually, that's 9.6. So you have a company that's actually grading comics, and they are they don't have a side. So you're not like, I think this is a 5. You think it's a 2. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah.
It's the definitive
rule. And then that is how you would buy your comics. If you're buying and selling older comics, it's awesome.
What about how can you learn how to sort of do that for yourself? I mean, obviously you're not going to be like an expert or anything, but is there like a 2 means the pages are yellow and torn, and a 6 means that the staple is askew or whatever?
This is the Overstreet comic book price guide. In that, you actually have prices of all the comics that have ever come out. They're graded inside the book. It also has a really nice area where it actually tells you how to grade comics. It's like 3 pages long, tells you about tears, tells you about staple separation, tells you about writing on the comics. So everything's there. You can actually grade your own comics, which is like a necessity for anybody who actually wants to know what their comics are worth. If you don't know how to grade them, then you have no idea. If people come in all the time and they're like, this comic's worth $100, and I'm like, actually, this big tear is going to cost a huge amount of money on your value of your comics. So.
Okay, so we're just about out of time, but is there a special box that you should have to put this stuff in?
Yeah, and if you want to collect them and you want to keep them, this is a comic box. It's just a standard box. Same thing, it's just going to keep your comics nice and protected. It doesn't protect from fire or water. So you want to keep you want to keep
You can't
this.
light cardboard on fire?
You cannot light this on fire or dump it in the bathtub because I've seen that happen and it doesn't protect.
You've seen it happen.
I've seen
You've
it
seen
happen.
someone dump one of those in a bathtub.
Well, you know, not on purpose, but you know, drinking nights. You never know.
Yikes.
Unhappy spouses.
Yeah.
Okay.
We won't go there. That's another episode. All
There
right.
you go.
Well, this is very informative. Thank
you.
you, because I think a lot of people don't know like how to properly care for your comics, and that it does make a difference to their longevity, what you do to them after they come off the shelf.
And before we leave, I just want to say our model today is wearing Gucci.
Punch TV is brought to you in part by Amazing Stories, providing Saskatoon with comics, games, toys, graphic novels, t-shirts, and more for over 22 years. Online at AmazingStoriesComics.com, in person on 8th Street in Saskatoon.
All right, well, in tribute to Frankenstein the comic that's coming out, I thought I would talk a little bit about the history of Frankenstein, because it is amazing. The story of how Frankenstein got written is as compelling a story as the book itself. Basically what happened is there's these two rapscallion poet buddies, Lord Byron and Percy Shelley, and they run off with their teenaged, knocked-up brides. So there's Mary Godwin and Claire Claymont. Yeah, so that's a little dicey. Moralizers of the time called them the League of Incest. So they're hanging out, they're creative people, and one night Lord Byron's kind of bored and he's like, okay, let's everybody write a ghost story. So Mary decides to start to write Frankenstein. She was 18 years old. Now, here's the tragic part. Within 6 years of starting to write that story, the other 3 League members would be dead, along with 3 of her own children, her sister, and I think Shelley's first wife. So just a lot of death surrounding this, and a lot of trauma. Now, there have been hundreds of retellings of Frankenstein, and rarely do any of them hold a candle to the original. It is a sorrowful tale of misery for the monster, of misery for his creator. But there are a few riffs on this which are really close to my heart and bear mentioning in my top 5. So in no particular order, here are my fabulous Frankenstein favorite 5. Death Race 2000 is a film about a futuristic cross-country race in which the winner is determined not merely by speed in getting there, but also by the number of pedestrians that get killed. Now, Frankenstein is the reigning champion, and in the 1975 version, Frank is portrayed by David Carradine. He is the star, he is the fan favorite, and he hates the race. He secretly hates the race. He eventually succeeds in both winning and killing the president, and then assumes the office of the president himself and puts an end to the death race. He is wonderfully charismatic. Now, recently they just remade this again as Death Race 2050 with all the wonderful campy effects that Paul Bartel couldn't afford to do in 1975, and it is definitely worth checking out. Now, my next one is Spirit of the Beehive. It came out in 1973. It's a Spanish film that focuses on a young girl named Ana, played by the adorable Anna Torrent. And she is fascinated with the 1931 American horror film, Frankenstein. It comes to her town. It's a really small town, so a movie coming to the town is a big deal anyway, but she gets obsessed with it. It's a kind of political movie. You can look at it, the symbolism on a lot of different levels, but the best part is just that leading lady. She's 7 years old. She will charm you off her feet. And yeah, it's her being obsessed with Frankenstein. Who isn't? Next up, in 2012, Bernie Wrightson and writer Steve Niles began publishing a comic book called Frankenstein Alive Alive. Kind of billed as a sequel to Wrightson's acclaimed 1983 illustrated work. he is amazing. He won the National Cartoonist Society's award for his work on it, which was way, way overdue. The artwork is stunning. Now, Bernie's probably best known for Swamp Thing, another man monster who struggles with his own identity. But I love how inky it is. It's rich, it's shadowy, and it is just full of flavor. And sadly, Bernie passed away last year, so get your hands on his work. And Alive #4 just hit the shelf, so it's definitely worth checking out. Next up, Venturestein. He is a character/experiment created by Dr. Venture in the cartoon The Venture Brothers in episode Viva los Muertes, which is season 2, episode 11. He is amazing. It has a really good Scooby-Doo homage in it, and Venturestein was originally a henchman of the Monarch. He got killed by Brock, and then he got resurrected as a military money-making scheme by the good doctor. And finally, Frankenberry, the most delicious of the General Mills cereals monster suite, featured Count Chocula, Boo Berry, Yummy Mummy, and Fruit Brute. These launched in 1971, and seasonally some of them are still available. Frankenberry also had originally an indigestible pigment that supposedly turned some children's feces pink and was tagged as a syndrome called the Frankenberry stool. Well, now it's up to you to build your own top 5, cobble together your favorite Frank pieces, and let us know what you think is best. And you can post your suggestions on our Facebook page at Shaw Punch TV.
Punch TV is brought to you in part by Amazing Stories, providing Saskatoon with comics, games, toys, graphic novels, t-shirts, and more for over 22 years. Online at AmazingStoriesComics.com, in person on 8th Street in Saskatoon.
What's up, movie lovers? My name is Craig Silliphant, the Movie Geek, and this is 5-Minute Film School for Punch TV. There are a lot of ways you can shoot something. You can edit between multiple cameras or just throw one camera up for a locked-off static shot on the sticks, otherwise known as the tripod. But you can use various camera shots, angles, and movements to add dynamism or even bring out themes in the story. One way to make a movie cinematic while adding to the story is what's called a tracking shot, or the dolly shot, which we're going to look at today. Now, before purists start writing angry emails, let me make a quick distinction. Many people use the term dolly shot and tracking shot interchangeably, which is fine, but technically incorrect. Let's break it down. A dolly shot is when the camera moves towards or away from the subject being filmed. It's called a dolly shot because the camera is mounted on tracks called dolly tracks, which create smooth movement. A tracking shot is when the camera moves sideways or parallel to a subject or landscape. It doesn't have to follow a specific character. It might be panning a landscape or moving through a crowd. You can use dolly tracks or a Steadicam or even be handheld. While dolly and tracking shots have a lot in common, let's focus on tracking shots for today. The neat thing about a tracking shot is that they tend to be longer in length. They explore a space or scene without making a cut. This allows the viewers to immerse themselves in a scene. Let's look at some examples to illustrate what I mean. Now, because we've only got 5 minutes, I can't show you each scene unbroken, but I urge you to look them up on YouTube or in the movies themselves to fully appreciate them. Perhaps the best tracking shot of all time is in Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas. In this scene, Ray Liotta's taking Lorraine Bracca to the glitzy Copacabana on a date. The camera follows them as he cuts past the line and heads down the back stairs. Guys like him don't wait in line, sweetheart. They wind through the labyrinthine guts of the club, Liotta saying hi to people he knows. This guy's connected. They even cut through the kitchen at one point, moving through waiters and cooks doing their jobs. They pop out into the club, and the maitre d' motions for a table to be put right up front for them. Lorraine's character is following Liotta, like the camera, and is swept up in his world, impressed by how important he is. Not cutting means we feel every moment of real-time excitement in the busy club. We see the complicated route that Liotta knows well. What is amazing to her is effortless for him, which makes him all the more irresistible. Because of the timing involved with all the actors and extras, a good tracking shot can also be a feat of choreography and filmmaking. Take the movie Atonement. It's 5 minutes long and takes place on the beach at Dunkirk. Yes, the same one as in the Chris Nolan film. The troops are gathered awaiting evacuation. James McAvoy, his mates, and the camera wander across the beach, surrounded by soldiers, burning vehicles, the injured, and the dying. Along the way, and again without cuts, the action is choreographed so that it happens as McAvoy passes by. At one point, the camera even drifts away from him to explore the carnage on the beach on its own. Then it finds him again. Just as we leave McAvoy, the camera takes one last long look at the beach from a distance as smoke obscures the horizon and more troops march into view, joining the others to wait for death or evacuation. Of course, this tracking shot shows us the horror of war, makes us wander around in it, makes us stare at it, refuses to let us look away. It's heart-wrenching. It's also technically baffling. If one person makes a mistake or misses a cue, you have to reset and start all over again. Sometimes these take days to shoot. Now, there are also movies like Hitchcock's Rope, Birdman, and Victoria, where the whole movie is either one shot or cheated to look like one shot, but that's for another day. Our 5 minutes are almost up. If you want to see a few more, check out the 6-minute tracking shot at the end of episode 4 of True Detective, the opening of James Bond's Spectre when he walks through the Day of the Dead crowd. Children of Men has some harrowing tracking work. Pulp Fiction uses it as well, and who could forget Danny in Kubrick's The Shining, pedaling his three-wheeler through the Overlook Hotel. Now you know about tracking shots. I'm Craig Silliphant, the Movie Geek, and this is 5-Minute Film School on Punch TV.
Well, that wraps up another episode. I want to say a very special thank you to Justin for coming down and talking to us about his great comic. And of course, a big thank you to our own cast and crew. And thank you to you for watching. And in the meantime, keep your dukes up.
That's how it's pronounced, right? Braca! Re Liotta!